It's another CGC unboxing, but this time with more data. Hey there, today I have a CGC unboxing, and in this one I'm going to open up a 17 book vintage comic book submission that I sent to CGC, but before the comics arrived at CGC, they were sent to the Comic Doctor in Canada. These books were sent out. I'm going to give you the whole timeline and the whole breakdown here, as these books did take quite a journey. I originally submitted these to the Comic Doctor in November of 2024, specifically November 21st. So what I ended up doing was I filled out the Comic Doctor's online submission form, and then on the same day went ahead and submitted the CGC submission form so that I had both forms. And then I packed up my comics and was waiting for the Comic Doctor in terms of getting the shipping label and all of that sorted out. Ended up shipping the books out to him about a week later. And then he and I had corresponded in terms of when my books arrived and was in his possession. And then it went on the Comic Doctor's and his team's backlog for working on my books. Then they were received at CGC around mid-February of 2025. So there was about a 2-month backlog waiting period there. The Comic Doctor, super popular and in high demand, so definitely understand that. And then ended up being about a few weeks after that, I was invoiced by the Comic Doctor and went ahead and paid the invoice. Then about 2 months after that, they were received at CGC on February 13th, and then on May 14th, 2025, I received a notification that one of the books in here had moved up to the higher value tier. Now, that's fine, but I was disappointed that only one of the books moved into the high value tier. I believe that all of these books being in the vintage tier, pre-1975 releases on all of these comics, I was hoping that I would get several notifications, but I didn't, so I'm already kind of anticipating my own disappointment here. I hope that's not the case. I hope a lot of these end up coming back in high grade. But there was a fee adjustment around mid-May, and then 5 days later, after I received that notification, the books finally were shipped by CGC. And then about a week after that, in late May of 2025, I finally got these books back. So when you're thinking about the total turnaround, door to door, this was a 6-month process to get my comics back. And also in back-to-back unboxings, I screwed up on the total number of comics. I got excited and sent 17, and just as I mentioned before, slight correction on the last video, I had a CGC pre-screen where I sent 16 books. So one more than the 15 ended up triggering an additional $10 of shipping fees back from CGC to me, and likewise here with this 17 book submission. Now, if you've watched my other raw book unboxing videos, I always disclose what I paid for the books and things like that. I feel like you kind of need to know what you're getting into when you're collecting comics, and then collecting them similar to how I do with getting them professionally graded and all of the different shipping fees and taxes and you name it. I like to track everything. And so a little bit of a breakdown here in terms of my total investment, because I want, before I open these, and I have not looked at the grades, the only thing I know is I do know which specific book was given the fee adjustment, because CGC actually explains that, and they send you an invoice with the line item. And so I looked at the line item, and right there, it doesn't show the grade or anything, but it just says this line item in an email. It'll tell you the amount that was charged, the line item. Again, it doesn't disclose the grade or the outcome or any grader notes or anything like that, but I was made aware of which book got the bump. So the kind of idea here is to just be fully transparent on what kind of investment and what kind of cost is really involved in this, because if I were really to look at the totals first, rather than the excitement of submitting books and getting them back from CGC, I don't know if I would send this in again. And again, if it's not like they're all 9/8, because I know that none of that would have pushed them all into the high value tier. Hopefully they're all higher than what I submitted, and I'll tell you what I screened the books at before I reveal the grade. But let me just kind of break down the total cost. So if this is something you want to get into, then you'll kind of understand what kind of investment you would need to make here. So my order with CGC, originally November 21st, 2024, was $594. That breaks down to $34.94 per comic book. It's a little bit extra at the vintage tier. So this is just that raw book submission with all of the shipping and handling and all the other stuff. I factor all of that in. There's no reason to break down the grading fee alone. It's just total kind of door-to-door, just CGC by itself, $594. Then on top of that, I had that $44 high-value tier fee or extra charge. There's $44 on top of that. I had to pay the Comic Doctor $420 to clean and press these 17 books total. That ends up working out to about $24.71 per book. Again, that's total door-to-door. And that's a grand total of $1,058.02 just to get the books cleaned, pressed, and graded. That doesn't have anything to do with my cost to acquire them. And that total amount works out to about $62.24 per comic. So, if you're thinking per comic, okay, for a vintage book, maybe that makes sense for the right kind of book. A $60 additional investment to boost a pre-1975 book, that's not bad. But when you're doing it in sort of a quantity or volume situation, that adds up pretty quick. Now, the last bit is, what did I actually pay to acquire these books? And when I show you the grade, what I'm going to do is, you'll see the grade, you'll see the CGC value, and always check the bottom that I write in there every time what it cost me to acquire the book so you can see that. But just in total, these 17 raw books cost me $779.97. So a very valuable submission to me just from the raw book cost alone, for a grand total comic book investment of $1,837.99. A tremendously expensive investment process. And this is what's making me a little nervous about this one, because I didn't get any of the high tier notifications except for one from CGC. Then it leads me to believe that these books are all going to come back relatively around the same grade that I screened them at, which I also estimated that if they were to get graded by CGC and they were to come back at the grade that I screened the raw book at, meaning the Comic Doctor had no influence on grade bumps or improvement, just a straight cost versus value comparison at the grade that I gave the book, and I have the total CGC fair market value of these books at the grade that I screened them at originally raw of $1,765. So this means I have potentially lost $73 in the process. Now, again, if it's like, okay, if I were to sell all of these books, I could get my money back. It was kind of a fun and neat experiment, and you wouldn't be wrong, and that's kind of the general idea of this. But man, the other things I could have done with that money, and then certainly you have the opportunity to lose as well if you're wrong about the grades. That was my explanation and breakdown of what it costs to actually do something like this that also takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, dealing with a lot of nerves, hoping the books get back safely, that the slabs aren't cracked. There's a lot of stress and worry and thought behind it that I didn't take into account in terms of putting this together. And you could certainly argue if you'd put that money in a savings account, and you're earning 4 or 5% interest, what does that look like? Yeah, you get a little bit of money and your money's secure. There's no risk in losing it, and I get that. But the general idea here is I think these books were worth submitting, that I feel like could get a grade bump, that would push this sort of break-even experiment a little further into adding positive value. But of course, there's only one way to find out. I have to get this opened up and show you which 17 books I sent through this process and what grades CGC finally gave to these books. I will share the screened grade that I gave the comic before grading so I can compare and look at hopefully grade bumps on these. But let's get this opened and find out what grades came back. So lights are on. I'm ready if you're ready, and let's get started And let's do it. Let's go here with Wonder Woman 206 from 1973. I purchased this book at auction from Infinity Comics. It was listed in fine condition. That's a 6.0. I got the book back, reviewed the book. I screened it as a 7.0, and I paid $37.31 for this book. At the time, a CGC 7.0 was worth $135. So just kind of pointing this out as an example of the gap between the price that I paid and then the potential CGC value, and then also potential value if it got a grade bump, so that there's enough of a margin. So when I was talking about that roughly $62 per book type of investment, I'm essentially looking for at least that in terms of a gap. So let's check out the first one, see how it turned out. Listed as a 6.0, I thought it was a 7.0, sent it to the Comic Doctor, and CGC said that it's a 9.2. So a wonderful, wonderful grade bump here on Wonder Woman 206. It got off-white to white pages. The Origin of Nubia. Nick Cardy on cover art here. A absolutely stunning and gorgeous CGC 9.2 of Wonder Woman 206. All right, and just like with all of my CGC submissions where I send them off for cleaning and pressing, I'm looking for the grade bump. That's the whole point of this. If any of them get a 9.8, I'd be super fortunate, but just looking for that grade bump. Next one is Supernatural Thrillers number 7. This is featuring The Living Mummy from June of 1974. I also picked this up at auction from Infinity Comics, and it was listed in very fine condition, just straight VF 8.0. I paid $9.17, and when I say I paid and I won at auction, that means it's the final auction price plus tax plus shipping. So probably ended up bidding on this book somewhere around $7 to $8. And when I got the book back, I screened it as an 8.5, which at the time, and this is not the current CGC fair market value, this is at the time that I sent the books off to the Comic Doctor, and this is something that I do. I like to track the values at that moment because I want to remember what was I thinking at the time, why was I doing this. So at this point, for Supernatural Thrillers number 7, back in November of 2024, it had a CGC value of $68 in an 8.5. So I figured, okay, didn't pay all that much to acquire it. Let's go ahead and send it in. Sent it into the Comic Doctor, who forwarded it to CGC, and CGC gave it a 9.4 white pages. Excellent. That's what I'm looking for. Up from an 8.5 to a 9.4. Book looks really, really nice. Very bright, vibrant. Definitely worthy of the white pages there. Very nice. Supernatural Thrillers. Number 7, also getting the grade bump up to a 9.4. So far, so good. Let's keep it going with Defenders number 11. This is from 1973. Sal Buscema on cover art. Classic Bronze Age Marvel comic. The 20-cent covers that I love. This like early to mid 70 or pre-1975, 70 to 74 type of era. Looking for those 20-cent covers. These jump out at me every time I see them. I won this book at auction from Infinity Comics as well. This was listed VF minus 7.5. I ended up paying $12.67 for this book. When I got it back, I screened it as an 8.0, and an 8.0 had a fair market value, a CGC 8.0 had a fair market value of $26. Now, why would I do this? I think this one, if I remember right, to me, had a lot of potential in terms of its ceiling. I really felt like maybe the pressable defects, and I'm kind of giving it a once-over, it did maybe look like it could have been improved up, that maybe had a 9.8 potential. But let's see, CGC said that it is a 9.4 white pages. Still a very good grade, but I really needed this one probably in a 9.6 to have a lot of value here. So this might be one that I think about in terms of whether I move on from it or keep it long term. Definitely see some color breaks around the staple and so forth. But really nice 9.4 on those 20-cent covers. Now we have Marvel Team Up number 4. This is from 1972. Another 20-cent cover. Super great single-digit issue of Marvel Team Up. Also won this book at auction from Infinity Comics. It was listed in very fine condition, so an 8.0. I screened it also as an 8.0. I ended up paying $42.90 to acquire this book. And at the time, a CGC 8.0 was valued at $118. So this is more typical. Again, looking at the data, it's like the Defenders 11. I must have screened it and just put it in the bin and didn't look at the numbers as closely as I should have. This one is more typical, where $43 buy-in, $118 CGC fair market value. There's some space in between for trying to get this book back in at least an 8.0. So let's see if this one got the grade bump. Marvel Team Up number 4, and CGC said 8.5. So I guess technically a grade bump, but this one's pretty rough as an 8.5 white pages. Tough book all around. The 20-cent cover, yes, but the all dark kind of framed border. Seeing some color breaks and some color breaks around the bottom corner here. Right there, if you can see it, just breaking a little bit of too much color down there in the corner, I think, for CGC's liking. Got white pages on the page quality, but an 8.5 on that one. The next book we have is, this is one of my all-time favorites. S.H.I.E.L.D. number 7, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 7. Jim Steranko on cover art here. This is, I don't want to say probably his most famous cover, because there's the Hulk annual, X-Men books. There's a lot of great Captain America Steranko here, but this I particularly love, this homage to Salvador Dali, the time clocks, the melting of the platform that Fury's on, the skulls, like there's so much this is super cool. Now this one, taking a little bit of a break from the Infinity Comics auction pickups that are included in this submission, I bought this straight away from Mile High Comics. I try to buy books from them listed in near mint condition, which is something like a 9.125 or something like that. It's not really averaging out to 9.4. And there are some times where I will go ahead and dip into the lower grades, and sometimes you get lucky or you get surprised with how they grade. So this was a book listed in very fine condition. So estimated around an 8.0, but when I got it back, I screened the book and I gave it a 7.5. Now a CGC 7.5 is $78. I paid $55. So again, just like the Defenders 11, not a whole lot of room here, but this is one that I just kind of decided I wanted to go ahead and submit it for this process because one of my all-time favorite covers, and just love this book so much. So let's see, after the Comic Doctor worked on this book, S.H.I.E.L.D. number 7 from 1968 got a 9.2 off-white pages. Page quality a little bit lower than I would have liked. I imagine it's probably, I can see like a little bit of tanning, not foxing, just general tanning, especially on the bottom of the book. But I still think, overall, a really gorgeous high-grade copy here, a 9.2, really, really nice, love it. And I'll go ahead and proudly display this one, just one of the best Steranko covers on Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., number 7. Okay, here is another one, and now I remember I did take a chance. This is Green Lantern number 41, appearance by Star Sapphire, cover and interior art by Gil Kane. This one's from 1965. What I ended up doing was I wanted to go ahead and experiment with a purchase from Mile High Comics and purchase a number of books listed in very fine condition. And what I tried to do is try to find relative value at that very fine grade tier in hopes that maybe through an improvement up close to near mint, then there'd be some additional value being added there. So I took a chance on this one. This was listed as a VF copy. I paid $83.20 for this book. When I got it back and looked at it, I graded it as a 7.0, and the CGC fair market value at the time for a 7.0 of Green Lantern 41 was $112. So a little bit of a window there, but not much. And I kind of set it aside thinking that there could be some ways to improve the book. I think it's a really nice, gorgeous copy. So it was one of those that I think the VF grade or VF tier, because it's a grade range at Mile High, I think it was fair, but it had what I saw were many pressable defects. So here we go. Green Lantern 41, originally a 7.0, sent it off to the Comic Doctor, and CGC ended up giving it a 9.2. Tremendous grade bump. And it's a great kind of experiment and learning lesson here about the kind of books that are at Mile High Comics, Infinity Comics, and other places where they kind of downgrade some of the books, but it's not that far off. So pleasantly surprised and happy with this one, as it had a number of color breaks, so I knew it wasn't a 9.8 candidate, but a really lovely copy of this Green Lantern 41 from 1965. Really vibrant greens, star sapphire there. The yellow in the background looks just a touch faded, and it did get off-white to white pages, but really happy how this turned out. So, as I mentioned with all the numbers beforehand at the beginning, not surprised that none of these are getting like 9.6 or 9.8, just because spoiler alert, didn't get that high value tier alert in terms of the additional charge. But still, it's nice seeing all of these get a grade bump. So thank you, Comic Doctor, for helping me improve on these books. The next one is Doctor Strange #1. This is from 1974, just missing that cutoff that I love so much, that 1975 modern book where I could have sent this in the modern tier. So just about 6 months, but too early or too late. Here we have a great Frank Brunner cover. First appearance of the Silver Dagger. Story continues in Marvel Premiere 14. But the first proper Doctor Strange story, solo title, where he gets the #1 issue. Strange Tales kind of continued on and featured Doctor Strange, and then he ended up getting his own title, and so this is the first issue of that solo series. Technically, I think some people refer to it as the second Doctor Strange series. I picked this up at auction from Infinity Comics. It was listed as a VF-. I picked it up for $90.91. I had assessed it once I got it back as an 8.0, and an 8.0 of this has a CGC value at the time, in November 2024, of $161. So about a $70 gap, which again, larger than that 62. And this is kind of where my decision engine kind of does this math for me, where it just tries to calculate what kind of cost is involved in the book, depending on how much I've paid for it. And then if there's enough of a gap, essentially, if the CGC value is higher than all of these costs and fees, then go ahead and submit it. And so that helps me make some of these decisions. In the end, though, it's kind of about passing the eye test. And so some combination of that is really the magic formula here, where I try to assess the book myself and make that decision. But the decision engine from a formulaic perspective really helps me decide which books to send through this process. So let's see. Doctor Strange #1, a VF-, screened by me an 8.0, and CGC gave the book a 9.4 white pages. Wow. This is great. Super, super cool. Man, the colors on this one just pop. This is just amazing. Definitely worthy of the white page designation. Man, I know I love the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 9.2, but this is tremendous. Thank you, Comic Doctor, for your help with this one. 9.4 white pages on Doctor Strange #1. Just an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous book. Oh, I love that one. I've been after getting that one in a high grade for quite a while, so really appreciate getting that. Okay, let's bounce to DC, and we have here the New Gods #10 from 1972. I was finding a number of these New Gods books on Mile High Comics, and I was buying them in near mint condition, and I felt like they were, I know Mile High prices and all of that, but I still felt like for the potential of these books, they were, I felt like a little underpriced. I know it's crazy, but anyway, I picked it up regardless of my level of insanity. And New Gods #10, I paid $34 for it, and when I got it back, I had assessed it as a 9.2. I thought it was a really strong copy. These books just aren't as desirable or as valuable, and a CGC 9.2 at the time is worth $62. But then I looked at the potential grade bump. If we're a 9.4, 9.6, or 9.8, then we would have some additional value here. So let's see here if the gamble paid off. New Gods #10, listed in near mint by Mile High. I graded it a 9.2, which is kind of the Mile High near mint. And CGC said 9.8. Okay, a little unexpected. I mean, I guess, like I was saying, the fact that these are not as mainstream as your Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman from DC, but my goodness, Jack Kirby. This is when he left to go to DC. This was essentially his Eternals. New Gods introducing Darkseid, 20-cent cover, off-white to white pages on the page quality, but I honestly was not expecting any 9.8s in this submission. So this is a lot of fun. Super cool. 9.8 on New Gods number 10. That is super awesome. Okay, let's keep going here. Here's, speaking of Doctor Strange and Strange Tales, Strange Tales 156. Now this one's interesting. Marie Severin on cover art and Jim Steranko and Marie Severin on interiors here. This book from 1967. And this one I did pick up at auction. This was from Infinity Comics. This was graded as a fine, very fine copy, a 7.0. I paid $29.75 for this. When I screened the book myself, I gave it a 7.5, and a CGC 7.5 at the time was worth $71. About a $40 margin in there, but felt like this might be worth to send in, especially just to get it conserved and slabbed here and encased, a book here from 1967, adding to my run of Strange Tales, graded Strange Tales copies. And let's see if it did get a grade bump up from the 7.0, 7.5 in its original state, and CGC gave it an 8.5 off-white to white pages. So the page quality on a lot of these, getting the white pages is quite rare here. And I do see a number of color breaks, but I still thought it was pretty strong. And again, it's one of those where sometimes there's a lot of value in grades under a 9.8, and this should be definitely the case. Nice high grade, 8.5 off-white to white pages for Strange Tales 156. All right, I want to just pause for a second and say I'm definitely nervous about showing you these books and revealing the grades, but this is a lot of fun. I don't get to submit pre-1975 books to CGC all that often, especially I don't get to the opportunity to work with the Comic Doctor very often, so I'm genuinely happy. I'm glad to get all of these great comics back in my collection. I'm just a little nervous just because of the sheer amount of money that's involved in all of this, and just want to make sure that I'm submitting the right book. So this is it's still thrilling and a lot of fun, but I'm also tremendously nervous. But I want to keep going with a lot of these books and show you Conan the Barbarian number 26 from 1973, 20-cent cover here again. That small window in the early to mid Bronze Age, where I love finding these books, and I love finding them at Mile High Comics. This, too, was a near mint copy that I ended up paying $25.90 to acquire. I assessed it as a 9.2, which is absolutely right down the middle, that Mile High near mint. And a CGC 9.2 of this book is about $40. Through my assessment and, again, passing the eye test, I really felt like this book had a lot of potential here. Just a great-looking book. Sal Buscema on cover art. Buscema and Ernie Chan on interiors. And let's see, after the Comic Doctor worked on it and sent it to CGC, CGC graded the book a 9.4 white pages. So really nice high grade, and it finally did get a page quality of white pages here on this one. Beautiful 9.4 Conan from 1973. Love the action on the cover. Oh, man, this one's tough. This one looks really, really nice. Everything looks like super clean. Just a tremendous job by the Comic Doctor and his staff. This one's, man, I see 2 or 3 color breaks here right by the staple that probably did this one in. Right there under the character box near the staple are some color breaks. So that's unfortunate, but boy, it certainly looks, I think, 9.6 at worst. So this one was a little harshly graded. But it did get the white pages on the page quality designation, so I will take that. And we'll move on to the next one. And we have Astonishing Tales number 16 from 1973, featuring Khazar and Zabu bursting through the page, just like Giant Size X-Men number 1 and a lot of other great comics that feature this sort of jumping out through the cover. I love these two. This one, I picked it up at auction from Infinity Comics, listed as a VF Plus, so an 8.5, and I won it at auction for $7.93. I had assessed the book as a 9.2, and a CGC 9.2 is $25 for this. So one of these where it was a low risk, high reward situation, really minor investment. and was happily surprised at the quality of the book when I got it. Also interesting, Jim Starlin on cover art on this one. So really low buy-in, and let's see if it got the bump all the way up from a VF Plus to a 9.2, and CGC said it's a 9.8. Perfect. Well, at least one of them followed this entire journey of a 9.8 white pages. Again, this is not going to break the bank or anything, but coming in from like a $7.93 investment, then with cleaning, pressing, and grading and that on top of it. But this is, I love this. 20-cent cover, Astonishing Tales, early 1970s. The label says Khazar, nothing else. That's great. Super clean. Wow, this is, I mean, this looks like it just was printed today. Just a tremendous cover. Almost looks like a facsimile. It's so beautiful. So thank you, Comic Doctor. Love this one. Khazar on Astonishing Tales number 16, getting a 9.8. All right, I'd like to cover up some lesser grades. Let's maybe do... Oh, that's just beautiful. I love seeing the vintage comics, the primary colors in full effect here. And just looking, just to take a second and just appreciate the creators, Jack Kirby, Steranko, Severin, Starlin, Buscema, Brenner. I mean, just tremendous. Just feel really lucky to have these back. So that was super cool. A 9.8 on that. And let's see, Incredible Hulk number 181. No, it's Incredible Hulk 173. This was the cheapest book. So I picked this up at auction. It was listed as a 6.5 at auction. I took a look at the scan, thought it was pretty decent, threw up a bid. I ended up winning it, got it shipped back to me for $4.48. I'd assessed the book as a 7.5, and a CGC 7.5 at the time was worth $20. So really minimal investment, but love the fact that this was a book from 1974, 20-cent cover on Incredible Hulk, really vibrant covers here. Cobalt Man appearance, so if it has the Cobalt Man, I have to send it in. So the Comic Doctor worked on it, forwarded it to CGC on my behalf, and let's see what CGC gave as a grade on this book. Incredible Hulk 173 getting a 9.0 off-white to white pages. So I almost feel like with this one, it was such a low buy-in that I had to at least give it a shot. And so it got the bump all the way up from a listed 6.5 to a 9.0. And not all books listed at auction by the seller when they give a grade. It's not like you can trust all of that, but there was a period of time, and unfortunately those days are over now, or I would still be participating, but there was a period where, like a 2-year stretch, where Infinity Auctions were listing these books with grades, and I just knew that almost all of them were undergraded, or if they were accurately or overgraded, I could tell right away, just the sheer amount of color breaks. You could almost tell, not even from zooming in on the scan. But there were many examples of that there's looked at the scan like there's no way that's a book in Fine Plus. There's just no way. And it came back a 9.0 after the Comic Doctor was able to work on it. So that's super cool. Here is Marvel Premiere 13, another great Frank Brenner Doctor Strange cover. This was a book that I had bought actually several years ago. So it was not a recently purchased book, and I don't remember if I bought it as a near mint or a very fine copy. I hope I bought it near mint. I think I did. I paid $58 for it from Mile High at the time, so I'm pretty sure it was near mint when I bought it. 1974, 20-cent cover. When I received it back several years ago, I graded it a 9.4. I think that my experience and my skills at grading over time probably leaned harsher, try to give more of an honest or undergraded assessment, just so that, you know, I feel like if there is a lot of potential in my books, that I'd rather be more conservative in that area. So we'll have to see on this one. But even a Marvel Premiere 13 and a 9.4 at the time, according to the values that I tracked, CGC 9.4 was $300. And so we'll see what this final grade is, and I'll show you what the values are. But this one's kind of all over the place. So let's see what CGC ended up grading this book, Marvel Premiere number 13, and it got a 9.4. Now, if it's still $300 at a 9.4, that's great. But I'm sure prices have maybe stabilized a bit since I submitted this book. 9.4 white pages, although the book does kind of have like a faded or appearance or color scheme here. But very nice. Always nice to get these back. in at least the 9.0. So probably if I thought about it, I probably would have graded it a 9.92 raw, sent it in, it gets the bump to 9.4, but I think that book has been raw in my collection probably for 4 or 5 years now. And my kind of grading standards have changed since then. And I don't want to go back and regrade my entire collection, but it's just something I want to think about is if I am going to submit a book that I've kept in my collection with a grade that I graded it many, many years ago, I might want to regrade it next time. So again, just trying to learn and get better with each submission. Next is Werewolf by Night, number 16, 1974. Mike Plug on interiors and cover. He Lives Again, the Hunchback of Notre Dame for those in Indiana. Werewolf by Night, similar to Tomb of Dracula, wasn't a collector, now I am a collector, and lots of fun, sneaky value in these. I bought this from Mile High Comics near Mint for $34. I had assessed it raw as a 9.4. A CGC 9.4 of this book at the time was valued at $124. And so certainly the margin, the distance between the price I paid to acquire it and the CGC value made this one an absolute no-brainer to send in. And CGC gave Werewolf by Night number 16 a 9.8 white pages. Love it. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Comic Doctor and CGC. I had a chance with this one. It was in tremendous shape when I got it. Oh, it just looks amazing. Fantastic. Darker inks, darker colors here. Difficult to get in high grade, yes, but just super vibrant, bright. Back cover looks nice and clean. Tremendous work, Comic Doctor. Really appreciate it here. Werewolf by Night 16. And this is actually the opposite. I have a number of Werewolf by Nights in a 9.8, but the Tomb of Dracula books are the ones I can never get a 9.8 in, so go figure. The next one, another Werewolf by Night. This is number 17, 1974. Gil Kane on cover art on this one. Not a particularly interesting or awesome cover, but it does have the behemoth busting through a wall, it looks like. But nevertheless, I picked it up at Mile High Comics, near Mint. Same thing as number 16. I bought both for $34. This one I had graded out a 9.2, and a CGC 9.2 of Werewolf by Night number 17 had a value at the time of $71. So let's see if this too got the grade bump from CGC, up from a 9.2 to a 9.4 white pages. I jinxed myself talking about my Tomb versus Werewolf books. 9.4 white pages on this one. I think I can already tell both the top corner and the bottom corner are just slightly blunted with some color loss, and that's just kind of a dead giveaway that it's not going to end up getting a 9.8. But my good, the back cover, just the ad, that thing is pristine, super clean and white. Thank you, Comic Doctor. I can tell that you guys put a lot of effort into this. Just I think the color loss on the corners was just a little bit too much here to couldn't quite get the 9.8 on that one. And it's also it's I don't know why this pains me so much. These are books from 1974. We're like just one year, in this case 7 months away from getting a modern tier submission, cheaper rate from CGC. It's so dumb for me to think about. But anyway, next is Doctor Strange number 2. Again, August 1974. So close. This is another Frank Brunner Doctor Strange cover. This one also picked up from Infinity Comics at auction. It was listed and very fine, but the MVS intact. I always love that the Marvel value stamp inside, it's intact. They always pointed that out. It seemed like on every issue. I know it's an important thing, but it was always funny because they ended it with an exclamation point like that. It was an amazing vintage VF copy with the MVS intact. So it didn't get a purple or a green or orange label or whatever label is when that's cut out. I ended up bidding $43.06 on the book. That's my total cost, the bid, and shipping and tax. I assessed the book myself as a 9.0, so I think already up from an 8 to a 9 in terms of my personal screening, and a CGC 9.0 of Doctor Strange number 2 was valued at about $50. So this one must have been an eye test situation where I felt like there was more potential in the book. And let's see what CGC said after the Comic Doctor worked on it, and it got a 9.6 white pages. So yeah, this was a book that moved in the right direction all around, which is great. And always love seeing this where it goes from like an 8 to a 9 to a 9.6. And the last remark about Infinity Comics that I'll make is a lot of times it was the back cover scan that gave away a lot of like the dirt and the damage from these books. And one of the reasons I stopped bidding there was because they stopped putting scans at the back cover. So I'm like, how can you list a book at auction and list it as a VF plus but not show the back scan? Because a lot of times that's really what revealed a lot of the dirt, even like page tears and stuff like that. And now I'm just talking nervously because I only have one book left. It is that high value bump. Now, I will admit too, I think at the beginning I told you I was charged an additional $44. So it wasn't like some crazy percentage of like a $50,000 comic or anything like that, because that also would have hurt my credit card. So I don't know exactly what the final grade would be, but let me talk about this one because this is one of my favorite Superman covers of all time. And the best way I can describe the art on this one is it was just another example of Neal Adams ahead of his time. And this is Superman 233. Now, when I first saw this, I literally thought this came out in like the 80s, that it was maybe a Copper Age book. This is a 15-cent cover from 1971, cover art by Mr. Neal Adams. And when I realized that it was a 1971 release, I was blown away. I was kind of shocked. There's a few comics that come to mind, or at least in my mind, that kind of have this impression on me, where I was just a clear example of somebody just raising the bar. And of course, Adams on Batman is the gold standard in terms of that bar being raised. But here he is on Superman. And it's been a book that I've been in love with for a while now and have been chasing. Now, this one, we talked about essentially two sources for this submission, Infinity Comics and Mile High Comics. This one was an Atomic Avenue pickup. I had contacted the seller and I asked for a scan. He gave me the scan. I reviewed it. It looked all right. I didn't think too much of it. I was like, I see color breaks. I don't think it's going to be a 9.8. This book has crazy value and way out of my league and way out of my budget in a 9.8. And I ended up paying quite a bit for it because it was listed in near mint condition, which I was like, I don't think it's near mint. I had reviewed the book, screened it myself, and graded it, and I gave it an 8.0. And that was kind of my thought when I saw the scan from the seller, was the structure of the book, the color breaks, everything about it. It's like it feels like a VF copy. It feels like another like Infinity Auctions VF copy. I went ahead and took a chance and bought it anyway. Sometimes you can contact the seller, maybe negotiate a little bit, but more or less you're just going to get what you pay for, and you have to request scans. So there's a little bit of an annoyance there, but if you can live through the annoyances, sometimes you can get some decent deals. Sent this to the Comic Doctor in hopes that we could move it up from an 8.0, because once we get into the 9.0 range and above, that's where the value really starts to jump. Now, a CGC 8.0 is around $300, or it was at the time. So that was where I could kind of justify the amount of money that I was going to spend on the book raw. And also, I remember at the time telling myself, because I think I bought this right before, it was probably around the summer of 2024. I was telling myself, go ahead and spend more money to get some of the bigger books. Like, do this to your collection. Stop buying the $3 or $4 books or the newly released modern books and trying to get them in a CGC 9.8 when they're worth like $30. Like, go ahead and make a proper investment. So this is an example of that. I'm a little uncomfortable here. I want to see what the final grade is. I know that it got the bump with that additional charge, but let's see. Here we go. Originally assessed by the seller as near mint. I don't think it was actually near mint. I assessed it as an 8.0. Superman 233 from 1971, and CGC gave it a 9.4 white pages. White pages on top of this. Absolutely tremendous. I gotta take a second and just look and just kind of marvel at it. Pun intended, DC. 9.4 white pages on this. I think my only regret is never getting a chance to meet Mr. Adams. I visited his comic store in Burbank, California many times, always hoping to go in there and maybe see him, be there at the right time and right place to to shake his hand and tell him, how much I appreciated his impact on comic books in the industry, raising the bar so many different times. This is, wow, a really nice prized possession in my collection. Super, super thrilled and happy here. I will tell you that it was extremely tempting to look at the grade for that one when I got the charge. And what I ended up doing was I jumped on like GPA and Go Collect, and I tried to like just kind of guess maybe based on the charge, what kind of tier would it have moved into, and I really thought it was going to get a 9.0 based on the values. I just figured that makes the most sense to me to move into a 9.0 value and then get the charge, $44, decent charge, but not a lot. And that's where I really thought it was going to settle. So again, I do this where I kind of beat myself up and already say, just be disappointed. This is going to be a really terrible submission. Superman's going to be a 9.0. I do this to myself all the time, but then I'm happily surprised here. I will say thank you. That's great. But also the Comic Doctor, thank you very much. I know you're in high demand. You're highly sought after. I really appreciate you taking the time to work with me to get my books cleaned, pressed, and moved on to CGC. I know it's tough. The Canada-US border, getting the books safely and securely in both directions. What you're doing is not easy for your US customer base, and I really, really appreciate it. Regardless of the grade that's on the label, these books look pristine, vibrant, colors kind of jumping off the page. And I know deep down that these books are at the highest grade possible that these copies could ever get thanks to the Comic Doctor. So I really appreciate you, Comic Doctor, for all of your hard work on these. And yes, super thrilled to end on that one with Superman 233 and a 9.4. Just a tremendous now centerpiece of my comic book collection. Thank you for sticking with me on this journey of going through this 6+ months of waiting to get these books back, and super happy to finally have them back in my possession, and for hanging out with me watching this video. I love the hobby and love collecting in this way, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, happy collecting, and see you next time.